Amara woke up to the gentle glow of morning sunlight spilling through her bedroom window. The quiet hum of the city below felt peaceful, almost comforting, but in her chest, a restless ache stirred. At 28, she had worked hard to build a life most people would envy. Her modest apartment was neat and warm, her job at a local marketing firm gave her both purpose and stability, and her circle of friends was loyal and loving. On paper, her life was perfect. Yet as she sat at her small kitchen table, cradling a cup of steaming coffee, her thoughts drifted elsewhere. She gazed at a framed photograph on the counter, a smiling couple, arms wrapped around each other, their eyes shining with the kind of happiness she had always dreamed of. She whispered to herself, almost as if afraid someone might hear, "Why can't that be me?" Her life had achievements, stability, and comfort, but it lacked the one thing she craved most: love. The kind that made your heart race, that made ordinary moments feel magical. She wanted more than companionship. She wanted passion, devotion, and someone who would see her as the center of their world. Her phone buzzed with a call from Zuri, her best friend since childhood. "Amara, you really need to slow down with this hunt for Mr. Perfect," Zuri teased, though her voice held concern. "You're amazing, but rushing headfirst into things can blind you." Amara laughed softly, a little defensively. "I'm not rushing," she replied. I deserve to be happy, don't I? And I want it now." Zuri's voice softened, filled with the worry only a true friend could feel. "I just don't want you to ignore the signs. Falling too fast, trusting too easily, it can hurt." Amara nodded, but she barely heard the warning. Her heart had a louder voice than her mind, and it drowned out any caution. She had always been a dreamer, maybe too much so, naive about the harshness life could bring. Her mother often reminded her, "Patience, Amara. Life teaches us lessons we're not ready for." But Amara didn't want life's lessons on its own terms. She wanted love now. She wanted the validation, the excitement, the kind of romance that movies promised and books described with such longing. At work, she threw herself into her projects, impressing colleagues with her dedication and creativity. Her boss admired her focus, her co-workers admired her kindness. And yet, even among the praise and productivity, there were cracks of longing. Every time she saw couples laughing together in the hallways or held hands while walking past cafes, a pang of emptiness gnawed at her heart. Those fleeting glimpses of love reminded her of what she didn't have. Her vulnerability wasn't simply loneliness. It was a deep yearning for recognition, to feel seen and chosen by someone who adored her. She craved a love that made her feel complete, that validated every ounce of her worth. And the truth was, the longer she waited, the more impatient she grew, desperate for someone to sweep into her life and make it whole. Her life was a delicate balance, successful, respected, surrounded by friends and family who loved her. But in her heart there was a void, a space that no achievement or compliment could fill. She wanted more. She wanted excitement. She wanted love. And little did Amara know, the person who would soon appear in her life would seem like everything she dreamed of. Charming, handsome, confident. Everything perfect on the surface, and yet, everything she had been warned to avoid. For the first time in a long while, her heart skipped a beat, not from her own hopes, but from the unknown storm that was quietly approaching. The city glittered like 1,000 tiny stars as Amara stepped into the grand hall of the charity gala. The soft hum of music mingled with polite laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the occasional pop of champagne bottles. She had been hesitant to come, but Zuri had insisted, tugging her along with that relentless enthusiasm only a best friend could possess. Amara adjusted her dress nervously, smoothing the fabric and checking her reflection one last time. She wasn't expecting anything remarkable that night, just polite conversation, perhaps a new professional contact, and maybe a glass of wine that didn't taste like her usual bitter coffee. And then she saw him. Ethan. He didn't announce his presence with loud gestures or flashy displays. He simply stood near the edge of the room, tall, impeccably dressed, with a confidence that made heads turn without demanding attention. His eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the room with calm curiosity, and when they landed on her, Amara felt it. A sudden flutter like the first jolt of electricity when a storm is near. He walked toward her with a smooth, measured stride, the kind that suggested he owned every room he entered, yet without arrogance. "I don't believe we've met," he said, his voice low and warm, carrying a subtle charm that made her pulse quicken. "I'm Ethan." "Amara," she replied, her lips trembling slightly as she shook his hand. It was firm, confident, and for some reason reassuring. There was an ease to him that made her forget the noise around them, the chatter, the clinking glasses, the orchestra softly playing in the background. For a brief moment, it was just them and the world outside seemed to vanish. Zuri, ever vigilant, noticed his approach. Her brow furrowed as she watched from across the room. "Amara, who's that?" she whispered, a hint of unease in her voice. Amara shook her head, brushing it off. "I don't know. He seems nice." And he was nice, or so it seemed. His smile was warm, his laughter easy, and his interest in her words felt genuine. But there was something just out of reach, a subtle shadow beneath the charm that she couldn't quite place. As the night wore on, Ethan moved around her life like water flowing through cracks. He appeared when she least expected, asked questions that revealed more than he should have known, and vanished just as quickly, leaving her wondering if she had imagined his presence entirely. Her friends, attentive and protective, noticed the small inconsistencies in his stories. Zuri pulled her aside later, voice low, almost urgent. "Amara, I don't know him, but people are talking. Things don't add up. Some of the things he says, it doesn't feel right." Amara felt a flicker of doubt, a quiet voice in her mind asking her to step back. But the warmth of his attention drowned it out. "Zuri," she said softly, almost pleading with herself as much as with her friend, "I've never felt this way about anyone. You're overthinking. Sometimes you just have to take a chance." That night, under the soft glow of chandeliers and the glittering city lights, Ethan leaned a little closer as they stood on a balcony overlooking the skyline. "You're different, Amara. I've never met anyone like you." Her heart raced, a heady mix of excitement and fear. She felt as though she were stepping on the edge of something thrilling, dangerous even, but irresistible. Every instinct told her to be cautious, to pull back, to protect herself. But her heart, impatient and hungry for connection, overruled reason. He smiled, just the hint of a smirk that no one else could see. It was the kind of smile that promised everything she wanted while concealing everything she needed to fear. Amara didn't notice it, or if she did, she ignored it, telling herself that love could conquer caution, that happiness was worth the risk. For the first time in a long while, she felt alive. Each word he spoke, each touch of his hand, each shared laugh seemed to confirm that maybe, just maybe, she had found what she had been waiting for. As she went to bed that night, the city lights still twinkling outside her window, Amara's mind swirled with thoughts of possibility. Excitement danced with caution, hope mingled with a whisper of doubt. And yet, she chose to focus on the thrill, on the promise of love. She didn't see the subtle signs, the way he avoided certain questions, the fleeting glance at his phone when he thought she wasn't watching, the slight hesitation before telling parts of his story. She didn't hear the soft rumors whispered in the corners of the room or the half-truths that slithered between his words. All she saw was what she wanted. A man who seemed perfect, someone who made her feel alive, desired, and seen. And in that choice, in that heartbeat of surrender to temptation, she unknowingly stepped onto a path that would test everything she thought she knew about trust, love, and herself. The night ended with a promise unspoken, yet felt in the electricity of the air between them. It was the kind of moment that could change a life forever. And for Amara it would. The days that followed Ethan's entrance into Amara's life felt like a dream she didn't want to wake from. Each morning brought a message from him, sometimes playful, sometimes tender, always leaving her heart fluttering. He remembered details about her that no one else seemed to notice. The way she twisted her hair when nervous, her favorite childhood snacks, even the little ways she liked her coffee. Every evening, he appeared as if by magic, often with flowers in hand, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. Some nights they dined at quaint little restaurants tucked away from the city's bustle, other nights at rooftop cafes with sparkling views of the skyline. He seemed to anticipate her every need, his gestures thoughtful, deliberate, and overwhelmingly charming. Amara's friends watched the growing whirlwind with mixed emotions. Zuri tried, gently at first, to plant seeds of caution. "Amara, he's moving too fast," she said one evening, eyeing the lavish gifts Ethan had brought. "It's beautiful, yes, but don't let it sweep you off your feet so completely that you ignore who he really is." But Amara couldn't listen. Each moment with Ethan was intoxicating. Every laugh, every touch, every whispered compliment felt like the fulfillment of a dream she had carried quietly for years. The doubts, the whispers of caution, even the nagging advice of her family, none of it mattered in the glow of his attention. At home, her mother tried again. Over dinner one night, she carefully asked, "Amara, how long have you really known this young man?" "Not long," Amara admitted, though her voice carried a softness, a vulnerability she hadn't meant to reveal. "But it feels right." Her mother's brow furrowed. "I just worry, darling. Sometimes, people are not who they appear to be. You know that, don't you?" Amara nodded politely, smiling, but in her heart she dismissed the warning. Love was supposed to feel this way, unmistakable, overwhelming, perfect. Any discomfort or doubt could be smoothed over with trust and hope. Still, small incidents began to ripple through the perfection of her days. Ethan would sometimes receive phone calls he insisted were just work, but would step outside to take. Once, she caught a fleeting look of guilt cross his face when he spoke hurriedly to someone on the phone. And there were moments when his story seemed slightly inconsistent, details shifting subtly, almost imperceptibly. Amara noticed these things, but she ignored them. Each red flag, each shadow she brushed aside, telling herself, love can fix it, love will explain it, love will protect me. Her friend's unease grew. Zuri whispered warnings in private, carefully choosing her words. Amara, I don't want to scare you, but sometimes charm can be dangerous. He's wonderful, yes, but don't let your happiness blind you. Amara's response was always the same. A warm smile, a gentle shake of her head, and a quiet refusal to let fear dictate her choices. She was in love, or what she believed was love, and nothing else mattered. Amara's joy, however, existed alongside tension. The audience could feel it. The bliss she radiated contrasted with the faint unease building beneath the surface. The way Ethan sometimes disappeared without explanation, the vague half-truths he shared, and the subtle glances that hinted at secrets, all of it created a sense of foreboding that hovered just beyond her awareness. Despite the cracks, every interaction with him made her feel alive. There were stolen afternoons walking through the park, where he'd gently hold her hand, and spontaneous late-night drives with the city lights painting their faces in gold. Each promise he whispered seemed to confirm that her dreams were within reach, that she had finally found the love she had imagined in countless daydreams. Her heart, hungry for connection and validation, chose to ignore the signs. Her happiness, vibrant and intoxicating, blinded her to the inconsistencies and the subtle manipulations lurking beneath Ethan's charm. Even her family's concern, though voiced gently and with love, became white noise against the symphony of emotions Ethan orchestrated. He was thoughtful, romantic, attentive, irresistible. And so, Amara floated in a world that seemed created just for her, a fairy tale romance that glimmered in every touch, every word, every glance. But fairy tales often carry shadows, and beneath the glitter of flowers, rooftop dinners, and whispered promises, the small fissures in Ethan's perfection widened unnoticed. Amara, blissfully unaware, was falling deeper, not just in love, but into the illusion of a life she believed she had always wanted. Her friends saw the danger, the audience sensed the warning, and yet she held on tightly to the hope, to the excitement, to the feeling of being truly seen. For now, everything was perfect. But perfection, Amara would soon learn, can be the most dangerous kind of illusion. Amara's world had become a whirlwind of excitement, love, and constant attention. Every message from Ethan made her heart race. Every call from him felt like a lifeline. She reveled in the feeling of being adored, cherished, and desired, something she had longed for so desperately. And yet, in the quiet moments, small cracks began to show. Her friends noticed first. Zuri had grown quiet with worry, watching from the sidelines as Amara's once bright caution seemed to vanish entirely. Amara, she said one evening, taking her aside after another lavish dinner Ethan had arranged, I'm serious. I've been noticing things. The way he disappears sometimes, the way he dodges questions, it's not normal. Amara laughed lightly, brushing it off. Zuri, I know you're worried, but you don't understand. He's perfect for me. Everything he does, it's because he cares. Zuri's sigh carried frustration and fear. Caring doesn't hide secrets, Amara. And trust me, charm can be dangerous when you ignore the red flags. But Amara's heart overruled her mind, as it had always done. She wanted to believe that love could solve everything, that the intensity of her feelings made any doubt irrelevant. And so, she ignored the subtle warning signs, dismissing her friend's concerns as envy or overcaution. Ethan, sensing her vulnerability, subtly began to manipulate situations. He made excuses that isolated her from her support network, suggesting that her friends didn't understand, or just didn't know how to appreciate real love. When Zuri called or texted, he would distract Amara with thoughtful gestures, laughter, or whispered promises. Each time, Amara's doubts melted away, replaced by the intoxicating thrill of his attention. One evening, Amara stumbled upon a moment she would never forget. She walked into Ethan's apartment to find a message on his phone, a brief, flirtatious exchange with someone whose name she didn't recognize. Her heart froze, a cold shock traveling through her chest. She felt anger, confusion, and fear all colliding at once. When Ethan turned to her, smiling as if nothing were wrong, she hesitated. Her mind screamed at her to confront him, to demand the truth, but her heart fought harder. Maybe it's nothing, she told herself. He's just being friendly. He loves me. He wouldn't hurt me. So she said nothing. She swallowed her fear, dismissed the evidence in front of her, and told herself she was overreacting. She chose comfort over truth, hope over reality. The days that followed were tense yet blissful in the surface layer. Ethan continued his charm offensive, his attention unwavering, his words carefully crafted to soothe her lingering doubts. Each time she questioned him, he offered explanations that sounded reasonable, yet subtly shifted blame away from himself. He was masterful in the art of reassurance, and Amara, desperate to believe, drank it in. Inside, however, the tension gnawed at her. She felt a subtle unease she couldn't fully name, a quiet whisper that said something was wrong. But each time it arose, it was silenced by the rush of excitement, the intoxication of being loved, and the hope that this was finally what she had been waiting for. Her friends noticed the change in her behavior. Family members expressed concern, their voices gentle but firm. Her mother, during a quiet dinner, pressed gently, "Amara, you've been distant lately. Are you sure he's the right one?" Amara smiled, forcing cheer into her tone. "Everything's fine, Mom. Really. He makes me happy. I know you mean well, but you don't see what I see." Her mother's eyes held a mixture of worry and resignation. "Just remember to trust your instincts, darling. Not everyone who shines is gold." Amara nodded politely, but her mind already pushed the warning away. She had chosen her path, and she was determined to follow it. The consequences, whatever they might be, seemed distant and abstract. But the tension continued to build, invisible yet palpable. The audience could feel it, the calm surface masking the storm underneath. Every unanswered question, every secretive smile, every moment Ethan dodged the truth added weight to an invisible scale that was slowly tipping toward disaster. By the end of the week, Amara's life had become a fragile balancing act. Her happiness relied entirely on Ethan's consistency, on his attention, on his carefully crafted words. Her friends' warnings had become background noise, her mother's advice a forgotten echo. She had isolated herself emotionally, not out of malice but out of desire for love, validation, and the dream she had been chasing her entire life. And in that choice, the decision to ignore the signs, to prioritize hope over caution, to surrender to the illusion of perfection, Amara unknowingly set the stage for the moment that would shatter everything she held dear. The storm had begun. She just didn't know it yet. Here is the full detailed script for Section 5, The Turning Point, Betrayal and Shock. 500 words. The night everything fell apart began like any other. Ethan had invited Amara to a private celebration at one of the most elegant hotels in the city. He said it was to celebrate their future. His words had made her heart soar. She had spent hours getting ready, choosing a dress he once said made her look unforgettable. As she stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the fabric, a small voice inside her whispered, "Something isn't right." But she pushed it away. Tonight was special. Tonight would silence every doubt. The ballroom shimmered with golden lights. Soft music floated through the air. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and everything felt grand, almost too grand. Ethan greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and a smile that looked perfect from a distance. "You look stunning," he said. But his eyes didn't linger. They flickered, past her, over her shoulder toward something else. Amara noticed. Her stomach tightened. Still, she told herself she was imagining things. The evening unfolded strangely. Ethan kept stepping away, whispering into his phone, smiling in a way that didn't include her. When she approached him once, he quickly locked his screen and slipped the phone into his pocket. "Work," he said quickly. "You know how it is." She nodded. But this time the explanation didn't soothe her. Later that night, a woman entered the room. She was elegant, confident, dressed in deep red. Heads turned as she walked toward Ethan. And Ethan froze. Amara felt it before she understood it. The shift. The tension. The truth pressing against the surface. The woman stopped in front of them and smiled, though it wasn't kind. "So," she said, looking directly at Amara, "you must be the new one." The word struck like ice. Amara blinked. "Excuse me?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "This isn't the place." The woman laughed softly. "No, I think it is." Guests nearby began to notice. The music continued, but the air around them felt suffocating. The woman turned to Amara again. "Did he tell you about me? Or does he still pretend I don't exist?" Amara's heart pounded in her ears. She looked at Ethan, searching for denial, for anger, for anything that would prove this was some kind of misunderstanding. But he didn't deny it. He didn't speak at all. The silence said everything. Tears burned behind her eyes. Ethan, what is she talking about? He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding her gaze. Amara, it's complicated. Complicated. The word shattered something inside her. The woman crossed her arms. We've been engaged for 2 years. The world stopped. Amara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Engaged. 2 years. Her mind raced through memories, the private phone calls, the secretive smiles, the vague travel stories. The red flags. The warnings. Zuri's voice. Her mother's concern. All of it came rushing back at once. I was going to tell you, Ethan said quickly, finally looking at her. But I didn't want to lose you. Lose her? He had never truly had her. You said you loved me, Amara whispered. I do, he replied, stepping closer. It's just, things are complicated. The woman scoffed. Complicated? You've been taking her money too, haven't you? Amara's head snapped up. What? The woman's eyes softened, but not with kindness, with pity. You didn't know? The room felt too small, too loud, too bright. Ethan, Amara said slowly, fear creeping into her voice. What does she mean? He hesitated. That hesitation was the final crack. You said you needed help with that investment, she continued, her voice shaking. You said it was temporary. He didn't answer. Her chest tightened painfully. She remembered the transfers, the savings she had worked years to build, the trust she had placed in him without question. I was going to pay you back, he said defensively. You're overreacting. Overreacting. The word echoed in her mind like a cruel joke. Guests were openly staring now. Whispers spread like wildfire. She could feel their eyes on her, the poor girl who fell for a liar. The naive woman who ignored every sign. Her humiliation was complete. You used me, she said, her voice barely steady. Ethan's charm was gone now. His expression hardened. You wanted this too, Amara. You wanted the fairy tale. Don't act like I forced you. The words cut deeper than any blade. He wasn't wrong. She had wanted the fairy tale. She had chosen to believe. She had ignored every warning. Tears spilled freely now, but she refused to let them see her break entirely. She stepped back, shaking her head. I trusted you. That's not my fault, he replied coldly. And in that moment, she saw him clearly for the first time. Not the charming man on the balcony, not the thoughtful lover with flowers, but a stranger who knew exactly how to manipulate her deepest desires. The illusion was gone. Only truth remained. She turned and walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last. The whispers followed her. The music continued as if nothing had happened. The world did not stop for her heartbreak. Outside, the cool night air hit her face, but it did nothing to ease the fire burning inside her chest. She gasped for breath, gripping the railing near the entrance. Her phone buzzed. Sorry. As if she somehow knew. Amara answered without speaking. Amara? Zuri's voice was urgent. What's wrong? Silence hung between them before Amara finally whispered, You were right. 3 words. Heavy with regret. Zuri didn't say, I told you so. She didn't scold. She simply said, Where are you? I'm coming. Within minutes, Zuri was there, wrapping her arms around Amara as the tears finally broke through without restraint. I ignored you, Amara sobbed. I ignored everyone. It's not your fault he lied, Zuri said softly. But Amara shook her head. No. I saw the signs. I saw them. And I chose not to see. That truth hurt more than Ethan's betrayal. It wasn't just that he had deceived her. It was that she had deceived herself. The money was gone. Her trust was shattered. And the worst part, the deepest wound, was the humiliation. The knowledge that her desperation for love had made her blind. As Zuri helped her into the car, Amara glanced back at the glowing hotel lights. Just hours ago, she believed she was stepping into her future. Instead, she had stepped into a lesson she would never forget. That night, she didn't just lose a man. She lost her illusion. And as the car drove away, one painful realization settled into her heart. Every warning had been there, and she had paid the price for ignoring them. The days after the betrayal felt unreal. Amara moved through them like a ghost in her own life. The world outside continued as normal. Cars passed, people laughed, phones rang, but inside her, everything was quiet and heavy. Too quiet. Too heavy. She stayed home from work for 3 days, claiming she was sick. In truth, she couldn't face anyone. She couldn't bear the thought of the whispers, the pitying looks, the silent judgment she imagined in every pair of eyes. Her savings were gone. Years of careful planning, overtime shifts, skipped vacations, all handed over in blind trust. The financial loss hurt, but the humiliation hurt more. She replayed the night at the hotel over and over in her mind. The woman's words, Ethan's silence, the way he blamed her for wanting the fairy tale. You wanted this too. The sentence echoed like a cruel reminder. She had wanted it. She had ignored Zuri's warnings, ignored her mother's concern, ignored the red flags that fluttered right in front of her face. And now she was alone, with the consequences. Her apartment, once warm and comforting, felt cold. The flowers Ethan had once brought were long dead, their dry petals scattered on the kitchen counter. She hadn't had the strength to throw them away. They felt like proof of how easily she had believed. At night, sleep refused to come. When it did, it was restless and filled with broken dreams. She would wake up with tears on her cheeks, her chest tight, her thoughts racing. How could I be so foolish? The question repeated endlessly. She stopped answering calls. Even Zuri's messages went unread for hours before she forced herself to reply with short, empty responses. I'm fine. I just need time. But she wasn't fine. Not even close. One afternoon, she finally gathered enough courage to check her bank account. The number stared back at her like an accusation. The reality hit again, harder this time. The money wasn't coming back. She felt sick. Shame wrapped around her like chains. It wasn't just about being betrayed. It was about her own blindness, her own stubbornness. She remembered the night she saw the flirtatious message on his phone. She remembered how her stomach had dropped, how her mind had screamed at her to confront him. And she hadn't, because she was afraid. Afraid of losing him. Afraid of going back to loneliness. Afraid of admitting that maybe the fairy tale wasn't real. That fear had cost her everything. Her mother came to visit one evening without warning. When Amara opened the door, she tried to smile, but it fell apart instantly. Her mother pulled her into a tight embrace. You don't have to pretend with me, she whispered. And for the first time in days, Amara let herself cry fully. Not the quiet tears she had shed alone, but deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere buried inside her. I thought he loved me, she choked. Her mother gently stroked her hair. Sometimes we see what we want to see. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But Amara didn't feel human. She felt broken. She avoided social media completely. She couldn't handle seeing other couples smiling, celebrating engagements, posting romantic pictures. Each image felt like a cruel reminder of what she had lost, or perhaps what she never truly had. Her mind became her harshest enemy. You should have known better. You embarrassed yourself. You let him use you. The guilt was relentless. Some mornings she couldn't even get out of bed. The weight of regret pressed against her chest, making even simple tasks feel impossible. The apartment grew messy. Dishes piled up. Curtains stayed closed. Darkness felt safer. Isolation felt easier. But in the quiet, something else began to happen. Reflection. Without distractions, her thoughts slowly shifted. Instead of only blaming Ethan, she began to examine herself, not with cruelty but with painful honesty. Why had she ignored the signs? Why had she needed his validation so badly? The answers weren't easy. She realized that her fear of loneliness had controlled her more than she wanted to admit. She had tied her worth to being chosen, loved, desired. She had believed that without a romantic partner, her life was incomplete. And that belief had made her vulnerable. It wasn't just about Ethan's lies. It was about the empty space inside her that she had tried to fill with someone else. One afternoon, her phone buzzed again. It was Zuri. This time, Amara answered. I miss you, Zuri said simply. There was no judgment in her voice. No anger. Just love. Amara swallowed hard. I'm ashamed. You shouldn't be, Zuri replied. He lied. That's on him. But I ignored you, Amara whispered. Zuri paused. Yes, you did. But that doesn't mean you deserve what happened. It just means you're learning. Learning. The word felt strange, painful, but also hopeful. Later that evening, Amara finally gathered the dead flowers and threw them away. It was a small act, almost meaningless. But as she dropped them into the trash, she felt something shift. Not healing. Not yet. But acceptance. The fairy tale was gone. The illusion had shattered. And in the wreckage, she was left with herself, raw, wounded, but still standing. For the first time since the betrayal, she opened the curtains. Sunlight streamed into the room, bright and unforgiving. It exposed the mess. But it also warmed her skin. She stood there quietly, letting the light fill the space. The pain was still there. The shame hadn't disappeared. The financial strain would take time to fix. Trust would not return overnight. But somewhere beneath the regret and sorrow, a small spark flickered. She had survived. And maybe, just maybe, that meant she could rebuild. The descent had been dark. But even in darkness, the smallest light can begin to grow. Here is the full detailed script for Section 7, Redemption and Rebuilding, Lessons Learned. 200 words. Healing did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, quietly, in small, almost invisible steps. The first real step was getting out of bed without forcing herself. The second was cleaning her apartment. The third was showing up to work again. When Amara walked back into the office after a week away, she felt exposed. Every glance felt heavy, every whisper sounded louder than it probably was. But something surprising happened. No one mocked her. No one humiliated her. Instead, a coworker simply said, "We're glad you're back." It was simple, ordinary. But it reminded her that life had not ended. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. The familiar rhythm of typing, planning, organizing campaigns, it grounded her. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt capable again. Useful again. That evening she called Zuri. "Dinner?" she asked. Zuri didn't hesitate. "I'll be there." Over plates of simple home-cooked food, the air felt different this time. There was no tension, no warning, no frustration. Just honesty. "I've been thinking," Amara said quietly. "Not just about him. About me." Zuri listened. "I was so afraid of being alone that I accepted less than I deserved. I ignored my instincts. I ignored you." Zuri reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You love deeply. That's not weakness." "But I loved blindly," Amara replied. And that was the difference. In the weeks that followed, Amara began rebuilding more than just her routine. She rebuilt her boundaries. She met with her bank and created a repayment plan to recover from the financial loss. It would take time, but she refused to let the mistake define her future. She started journaling at night instead of replaying painful memories. She wrote about the red flags she had ignored, the moments her intuition had whispered the truth. And slowly she began to trust that voice again. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. Ethan called. His name lit up her phone screen like a ghost from the past. Her heart jumped, but not the way it used to. This time it wasn't longing. It was clarity. She stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. "What do you want?" she asked calmly. His voice sounded different now. Less confident. Less charming. "Amara, I made mistakes. Things ended badly. I just want to talk." The word once would have pulled her in. Not anymore. "You didn't make mistakes," she said firmly. "You made choices." There was silence on the other end. "I cared about you," he insisted. She closed her eyes briefly. "I cared about who I thought you were," she replied. "But I don't need closure from someone who never gave me honesty." Her voice didn't shake. Her chest didn't tighten. For the first time, she wasn't speaking from hurt. She was speaking from strength. "I hope you find whatever you're looking for," she added. "But you won't find it with me." And then she ended the call. Her hands trembled slightly afterward, but not from weakness. From empowerment. That moment wasn't loud or dramatic. No applause followed. No music swelled in the background. But something inside her shifted permanently. She had chosen herself. As the months passed, the weight of shame began to fade. Not completely, but enough to breathe again. She reconnected more deeply with her family. Sunday dinners felt warmer. Laughter felt real again. Her mother watched her carefully one evening and smiled softly. "You seem stronger." "I am," Amara replied. And she meant it. Strength, she had learned, was not about avoiding pain. It was about surviving it. She no longer chased perfection. She no longer felt incomplete without a partner. She began exploring things she had neglected: painting classes, morning jogs, volunteering at community events. Her world expanded in ways that had nothing to do with romance. And in that expansion she discovered something important. She was whole on her own. One afternoon, while walking through a park alone, she watched couples pass by. Months ago, the sight would have pierced her heart. Now she simply smiled. Love was still something she wanted. But it was no longer something she needed to feel worthy. She had learned to recognize charm without substance. She had learned that attention is not the same as respect. That fast love is often fragile. That instincts exist for a reason. Most importantly, she had learned that loneliness is temporary, but self-betrayal leaves deeper scars. She would never silence her intuition again just to keep someone. Opportunities at work began to grow. Her manager noticed her resilience and offered her leadership on a new campaign. It wasn't just about skill, it was about presence, confidence. And Amara carried herself differently now. Not desperate, not naive, grounded. One evening, as she stood in front of her mirror, the same mirror she once stood before preparing for that disastrous hotel night, she saw someone new. Not broken, not foolish, but wiser. There were lessons etched behind her eyes. Lessons that had cost her dearly, but shaped her deeply. She no longer chased fairy tales. She built real foundations. And for the first time in her life, she understood that love should never require silence, blindness, or sacrifice of self-worth. Redemption had not come from revenge. It had come from growth. She had fallen. She had shattered. But she had rebuilt, stronger, clearer, and finally aware of her own value. And this time she was not ignoring the signs. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a courtroom after the verdict, silent, heavy, and impossible to escape. Nia stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she had once defended. The broken vase still lay on the floor. The chair David had kicked over during his last outburst remained overturned. The walls held memories she could no longer pretend were beautiful. For the first time there was no argument, no apology, no promise to change, just silence. David had left 3 days ago after their final confrontation, not with tears, not with regret, but with anger. He had blamed her for everything. Said she pushed him. Said she made him this way. Said if she had trusted him more, loved him better, believed in him harder, things would have been different. And for a moment she almost believed him. That was the cruelest part of it all. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message from her mother. Come home. 2 simple words. For years, Nia had avoided going back to her childhood house, afraid of hearing the words she had ignored in the beginning. But now there was nothing left to protect. No illusion left to defend. She packed a small bag that night. Not because she was weak, but because she was finally tired of fighting a battle that was never hers to win. The road home felt longer than she remembered. The field stretched endlessly, golden and quiet under the late afternoon sun. Nia watched them pass by through tear-blurred eyes. She thought about every warning she had dismissed. Her mother's trembling voice. Amina's disappointed silence. The church elder who once pulled her aside and gently said, "Some storms don't look dangerous until they're too close." She had smiled at them all. She had believed love was stronger than fear. Now she knew something she wished she had understood earlier. Love without truth is not love. It is illusion. When she reached her mother's house, the gate creaked open like it always had. Nothing had changed. Except her. Her mother opened the door before she even knocked. For a moment they just stared at each other. Nia saw the pain in her mother's eyes, not anger, not triumph. Just pain. The kind of pain that comes from watching someone you love walk into fire and knowing you cannot pull them back. And then her mother pulled her into her arms. "No, I told you so." No lecture. Just warmth. Nia broke. She cried the kind of cry that empties a person. Years of defending, explaining, pretending, all of it dissolved in her mother's embrace. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her mother stroked her hair gently. "You don't apologize for learning," she said softly. The days that followed were slow. Healing is never dramatic. It is quiet and uncomfortable. Nia helped her mother in the garden. She woke early. She sat alone under the mango tree she used to climb as a child. And she thought. She thought about the first lie David had told her. About the first time he had grabbed her arm too tightly. About the first time he had blamed her for his temper. Those were the warnings. Not the big arguments. Not the shouting. The small moments she had explained away. She realized something that hurt even more than his betrayal. She had betrayed herself first. She had ignored her instincts. Silenced her doubts. Dismissed her fear. Because she wanted the dream more than she wanted the truth. That was the price. Amina came to visit one afternoon. There was hesitation when they first saw each other, years of distance lingering between them. But time and pain have a way of softening pride. "I should have listened," Nia said quietly. Amina sighed. "You weren't ready to." There was no judgment in her voice. Only honesty. They sat together beneath the mango tree and for the first time in years they spoke openly, not about David, not about blame, but about growth. "You're not weak," Amina told her. "You were hopeful. There's a difference." That sentence stayed with her. Hope is not foolish. Ignoring truth is. Weeks passed. David tried calling twice. She didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because she finally understood something powerful. Closure does not come from the person who broke you. It comes from the decision to stop letting them. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of amber, Nia stood alone in the garden. The air felt different, lighter. For the first time since everything fell apart, she wasn't replaying arguments in her head. She wasn't wondering if she had been too harsh, too emotional, too demanding. She simply stood there, present, whole in a way she hadn't felt in years. The price she paid had been heavy. She lost a marriage. She lost friends. She lost the version of herself that believed love alone could fix broken people. But she gained something more valuable: discernment, strength, self-respect. And that was worth more than the illusion she once protected. Later that night, her mother found her writing in a notebook. "What are you doing?" she asked gently. Nia smiled faintly. "Reminding myself," she said. "Of what?" "That next time, I won't ignore the warning." Her mother nodded slowly. "Because life always gives warnings. Not always loudly. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they ache quietly in your chest. Sometimes they show up in small discomforts you try to silence. But they are there. And if ignored, they collect interest." Nia learned that the hard way. She paid the price. But she survived it. And survival, she realized, is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a wiser one. The house still held silence. But now it was peaceful. Not heavy. Not suffocating. Just still. And in that stillness, Nia finally heard something she had ignored for too long. Her own voice.